If you enjoy the show, hit the like button, subscribe, and share it to your social media platforms. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy the show. Welcome back, everyone. Tactical Tequila Podcast. Tonight we have Corinna Harney-Jones on the podcast. She is a award-winning actress who has played in several movies such as Vegas Vacation with Chevy Chase, The Picture and Pinup, several TV series such as CSI, Nash Bridges. You're also a former Playmate of the Year. Corinna, take it away and just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, hello, and it's good to see you, and thanks for having me on your podcast.
You're welcome.
That was quite the introduction. I mean, that says a little bit. It says a lot. I'm grateful to be here, and I also co-host a podcast with my friend Echo. She I always say she kind of took me, drug me into it, and I didn't even want to do it in the first place, but it's been amazing, and now it's fun to jump into this podcast world, and congratulations on yours.
Thank you very much, and congratulations. Love the shirt.
I'm this, and I love it. It's so cool.
I'm glad that you like the material and like the sweatshirt. Like, that's awesome for you to even be wearing it.
New thing.
So let's go ahead and just kind of jump in. Let's start with your journey as a Playmate of the Year. How did that opportunity come about, and what was it like to be recognized in such a way?
Well, that's really a lot to even begin to explain, because initially I've always been very modest and shy, especially about my body when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to hide under I would put on my swimsuit and wear a t-shirt over my swimsuit when I would swim. So, and all of my friends, they took note of that and thought it was really funny the way I was. And so all my girlfriends at the time thought it was hilarious that I posed for the magazine. How it came about, I had a boyfriend at the time, my first boyfriend, and he found an ad in the paper that said Playmates Wanted. And when he brought that ad to me and said, he called me baby doll. He's like, baby doll, I think this is a huge opportunity for you. And I was thinking, because I was a youth camp volunteer, YMCA volunteer, I volunteered with kids. I thought Playmate sounded like, to me, because I wasn't familiar with Playboy at the time. And so I thought, Playmate, is it like golfing with the elderly, playing checkers with orphans? Really thought, maybe that's what it is. And that's why he brought this to me. He said, no, it's Playboy. They're looking for centerfolds. And initially I was so hurt and so upset that I went to my mom and I said, you're not going to believe what Dean wants me to do. And she said, what? I said, he wants me to try out for Playboy. And I got really quiet, and she said, well, Corinna, we all know you're probably not going to go to college, so maybe this is a huge opportunity for you. Anyway, needless to say, my mom is who talked me into it, but I went to my grandma first, when I found out, because I went to the lady's house, Marie Erickson. She was very good friends with the photo editor, Gary, who I'm still friends with, love Gary, the photo editor in Chicago. And she wanted to be a Playmate, but never, Hef was very selective with the girls. And so, she never got in, but still loved Playboy and the whole world. So she asked Gary, her and Gary became very good friends. She said, Gary, I'll scout for you. And she was living in Las Vegas at the time and started scouting Playmates. Well, I think I was the only one that ended up in the magazine, but I went to her house, filled out the Playmate data sheet, and I was scared to death, Matt. I was so afraid. I was shaking. I'm like praying, God, show me a sign if this is wrong. I'm outside, and there's these two little girls swimming in playing in the backyard and swimming in the pool in Summerlin. And one of them is my cousin. And I said, that's cousin Jenny. She goes, oh, that's my daughter's best friend. So I immediately felt comfortable. And she didn't take nude photos of me. They were in lingerie, and she just got me really, so that it explained to me how it's art, just like my mom said. She goes, Corinna, of all magazines, really, the images are beautiful, and they're not pornography in the way that some of these magazines that are extremely clinical could be. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so not to make excuses, but it's one of those things that I ended up, taking some photos, and she sent them to Gary, and Gary said, you know what, let's fly her out and let's do a test shoot. And then, that's a whole other story. And then I ended up Miss August, and I can't believe it, but I ended up Playmate of the Year out of the 12 in 1990. Well, they take the next year. You become Playmate of the Year of the next year, but 1991, of all 12 months, I ended up getting Playmate of the Year for 1992. So.
But, and, that's an amazing accomplishment, going that far and, overcoming the inner struggles that you had, doing it. And not only that, but, facing the boyfriend in which, you're like, are you serious? Like, you really are bringing this to me?
Yeah. And a lot of girls, like my mom even ended up telling me that when she was younger, and I actually remember an interesting thing from when I was about 10 years old. I had found Playboy magazines. It's so funny. I tell this story, and Kenny and Carlos, I think they're both still alive. I know Carlos it is, but they lived up the street from me, and there was the water cover, and it's like where you can turn the water on and off in the front of their house. And I saw something. It was like the cover was halfway off. I was riding my bike, and I looked down, and I was like, what's in there? And I opened it, and it was a bunch of Playboy magazines. I didn't know what they were. I just thought, oh, these look cool. I want to look at them. So I put them in my basket of my pink Huffy with the flowered banana. And then I rode my bike with these Playboys in the basket, and I hid on this half street that was by our house in where the light pole was. And I sat there, and I was amazed. I was and it wasn't anything weird or sexual to me. I'm 10 years old. I just thought, how cool these things fold out. The pictures fold out each one. I was like, they all do this. And I didn't even think, oh, she's naked. I just thought, wow, these are beautiful. I was 10. So my mom asks me, and I know this sounds bizarre, but this is what I believe. I believe things are kind of fate or something, because we were at the grocery store, and then we get in the car after grocery shopping, and my mom looks over at me right after. This is like maybe a week after I found those Playboys, and then I stuck them back, by the way. I went and put them back, and I'm looking around thinking I'm going to get in so much trouble. And Kenny or Carlos had to have hid those in there, or their dad or something. I mean, what were they in there? So my mom looks at me, and she goes, would you, 10, by the way, she goes, would you ever do Playboy? Well, I thought she was testing me, like I was in trouble. Like somehow she knew that I looked at the magazines. And I said, no way, Mom, because I knew what it was. She goes, well, I mean, this is a bizarre conversation, but this is what my mom and I always said. Maybe it was fate, because my mom goes, well, if you grow up and have a beautiful body, I'm saying this to me. She goes, it's more like art. Well, at that time, my mom was kind of wishing she could do Playboy. She had thought about it. So she was confiding in her 10-year-old. And I'm like, no, Mom, I would never. And she's like, you should be proud of your body. It's, if God gives you something and it's art, Playboy is like art. And I remember thinking that's a weird thing from my mom, who never even said a bad, like my mom never cussed anything. So I'm like, I remember thinking, because it was one of those things I put in the back of my mind. So then my mom and I both remembered that when I ended up posing for the magazine. I said, do you remember that conversation we had? She goes, I do. Why would I have said that to you? Well, it's like you were planting a seed or something. It was weird.
Well, with having such a diverse career, being of course Playmate of the Year, to acting, and you have a passion for guns, hunting, and now even an interest in tequila, which is great. I won't fault you on the tequila that you're drinking tonight. By the way, love the glass.
Thank you.
Yeah. But how all these elements come together in your daily life for you?
Well, I have to mostly credit my husband with getting me into, firearms now. When we first met, and backing up with Playboy and acting, before I even did Playboy, a friend of mine, we always wanted to make movies. He ended up going to film school, and he would put me in his short films. And I did my first commercial in the 4th grade with Dick Van Patten, and talking about full circle. Him and Hef were very good friends. They lived in Beverly Hills and very good friends. He was one of the good ones in Hollywood. There were a lot of good men with integrity, and Hef respected their privacy, and they would come hang out at the mansion, and they weren't philanderers. They weren't what you think they were. It's so awesome. Like, there's a Hef that people don't know about, that, he had these very respectable friends and lifetime friends. He was a loyal man that had a lot of loyal friends. And even though he was a playboy, the original Playboy, and admittedly so, he respected marriage, oddly enough, with his friends, and would never, entice them in that way. An adult magazine, but he wasn't a creep, which is interesting. And even though his life choices aren't what a lot of people would do or make, which is probably healthy, which I have a whole different view on that now. But anyway, I didn't mean to go off on a tangent, but happened. My first commercial in the 4th grade, and I loved being on set, from the time I was a kid. My mom had gotten us into acting and modeling, and I loved it. And I love storytelling, and I love performing. And so I, being the naive person that I was when I posed for Playboy, never realized I could have used that to facilitate things. And I didn't have a plan. So I, didn't end up doing some of the things that some of my counterparts did. Like my friend Brandy, was on Baywatch, and Pamela Anderson, and that have done things that I think are, kind of thrust them into the limelight more, where I got married. And when I was, after I got Playmate of the Year, just a few years after, because I thought I had experienced so much, jet setting and wild life. So I settled down, and I'm the one that actually got my husband into handguns. He was a hunter from the time he was a little boy. His dad would take him hunting, so he knew rifles and those. And then he and I think the first time he ever shot a 38, because I had a 38. That's what I grew up with. My first experience with a gun at all. I grew up in a law enforcement family. So my dad, I was probably 4, 5, 6. I was little bitty, but I will never forget it. He wanted me to understand, every gun obviously is loaded, no matter what. Every gun is loaded, and 100% will 100% destroy anything that barrel is facing. So I learned that from a young age. I also learned the power of a firearm because I remember him standing behind me when I shot my first .38 revolver. Was the first gun I ever shot, and the power of that terrified me. So I always had this reverential respect for firearms from that moment on. So it was very smart of my dad to have done that, because I wasn't going to be one of those kids that went and played with that gun. I didn't want to touch that gun. That gun is gun. And I knew what it did. I watched what it did with my own eyes and felt the power of that gun. And, and then as I got older, he would take me shooting until I was very proficient. And I've always had, a protection firearm and something like a shotgun in the house,
Yeah. So how you've been pretty open with that, your firearms, experience. Would you recommend just the average everyday woman to, get their CCW, and carry?
That is a personal choice. And I know so many, especially in my industry, so many people that it's a foreign world to them. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's a personal choice for any woman to want to carry. But I think I personally, especially living in America and with our Second Amendment rights, I think every woman should know how to defend herself and defend her home and be proficient with a firearm. But freedom, there's a lot of women that don't want to have anything to do with it. But I think it's safer to know how. And I think, my husband teaches CCW classes. And one of the things he tells women, is you have to understand the functionality of your firearm. And if I was to give advice for a woman that maybe did want to carry a gun or have personal home protection, or I would say that if it's not something that becomes a passion for you and that you want to learn about, but still want a gun, I think a revolver, back to the revolver, mm-hmm. that is foolproof. You don't have to really go through extensive training to learn how to clear if there was something that were to go wrong with your semi-automatic. There's all kinds of things that can go wrong in a situation. You have to learn to clear it, and all kinds of things, that if they don't want to worry about that and they just want something for, that's, I call it foolproof. It's, it's always a revolver I would recommend. I guess that's what you're asking me, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
and so getting into your newfound interest in tequila, do you have a favorite brand or an expression of tequila that you like drinking? And if so, what makes it stand out?
Well, just knowing that I was coming onto this podcast, I realized how, and it would probably be the same thing with guns, which is why I love your whole podcast. You can always learn more, and I'm excited to learn more about tequila. I know what I like, but I haven't explored it. And it's something that I now am interested in exploring, the more organic and preservative-free ones. But an interesting thing, and I don't want to sound like I'm bragging on, the people that I run with, because I don't. I just so happen to have a friend in Los Angeles. He was here for the day meeting with a friend of his. He did not tell me who this friend was. And he said, "You want to come meet for lunch?" And so I said, sure. At Jasmine, the Bellagio, sounded good to me.
Right.
Sitting at the table with Gavin Malouf, and this has been a couple months ago now, maybe more. And I got to taste his line, which he has a delicious two different tequilas. What is it called? The the Commissario. It's Commissario, but he has it was so good. He has a reposado that so good. And I sat there and just tasted it, while he did some big deal at the table, getting an East Coast, distribution. I high-fived him. I'm like, oh my gosh. And it was so good. But a lot of people are getting into these tequilas, and it's fascinating to me. And Patron was one I always loved. But I'm telling you, if you haven't tried his tequila, I think it's Commissario. It's the smoothest tequila I have ever tasted. And I didn't even ask him, does it have preservatives? Because it might. And
well, in the additive free realm, that's kind of what we as aficionados and connoisseurs look at. So smooth is a relative term, so to speak, but if a tequila should not be smooth. It should be robust. It should be full of flavor, have good body to it, great mouthfeel, and you should be able to taste the agave on it.
Okay, yeah. So that's the thing with tequila is the agave.
Usually when it comes to those tequilas that people and for everybody it's different, what someone thinks is smooth and
yeah.
But usually if it's smooth, usually it's a good indicator that there's an additive or two in there.
Oh, got you. All right, Gavin.
I see that you're drinking it on the rocks or with you said soda.
Oh yeah, so my go-to tequila would be, I always like to, and again, not being a connoisseur and not knowing tequila, I just know what I like. I really liked that Casamigos, and there are a few that I started liking, and I'm sure they all have, your preservatives and everything else. But I started drinking, obviously, if I was to say where I started drinking tequila, it would be your typical in a margarita. But I love, they call them, what are they called? Soda. I would ask for it and they would tell me what it was, but I just made it. I thought I made it up. Soda, just soda, water, soda with tequila and a splash of grapefruit. I love, and a little bit of lime. But then real grapefruit, if you take real grapefruit, or in Arizona, they grow everywhere. Those, the ones that are like the grapefruit. Real juice with tequila, soda, and real fresh basil. I love it. It's delicious. That is so good. That's like my yummy, but my go-to is just no sugar. I don't do the sugar, I like to keep it sugar-free.
I like that. And so the first drink that you described is very similar to a Paloma. So that's usually grapefruit, tequila, splash of soda, and lime juice.
Yes. And I love that. So I like a Paloma, but I also can just do as long as it's a top shelf tequila with soda and lime, and that is always good.
Okay. So you definitely prefer it in a cocktail over drinking it neat or on the rocks.
Yes. And that was the the Commissario I was telling you. And then I've had tequila throughout the years that I know were special bottles of tequila. Did not take note of them. So, and I know I sat and sipped on them and enjoyed immensely. And I hate that I have no idea. It's like this one that I told my husband to get isn't the one I thought it was. And here's the funny thing. The one that I thought it was, because I wanted to sit and drink it here because I don't have any tequila in my house right now. Shame on. I never drink. So anyway, it wasn't this one, but I don't mind this one, but it does bother me that there's preservative.
And so that's Herradura that you're drinking, correct?
Yeah. And it's, nothing obviously fancy or anything, but I had something that was in a bottle similar to this, but it was more round. I can't find it anywhere. I don't know if it was a petite tequila, but it was organic.
Mm-hmm.
I know that it had, because the girl that was letting me taste it when I bought it, and I went back and got 2 more bottles and went through them. She was telling me that there are no preservatives, and I thought it was this one, and yeah, that shows you how.
Well, we'll definitely have to get you and Chris out to some of the Tequila Club events here in Las Vegas to broaden your guys' horizons on good tequilas.
Right.
So going back, being in the public eye, do you feel that your interest in guns and hunting sometimes is misunderstood, and especially in the media, or, how do you respond to those perceptions?
Oh, it's an interesting question, because in my world, I say my world, I don't even have an agent. I'm not, I'm like low on the totem pole in the acting world and washed up. But I love it. And there are things that are still to come, and I'm enjoying every minute of it. But I think that it is very misunderstood, because in Hollywood, especially, you have a misperception because people are afraid of things. And what happens is, I think that if there's a shooting or something that happens and it's sensationalized, the first thing that people want to do is, talk about gun control and all of these things. And so they already have a bad taste in their mouth. So I don't talk about it. I don't get into that conversation. I just haven't. No one asks me. And I don't know if they assume that I think the way they do. Do you know what I mean by that? Because I've never even had the conversation. I just haven't with anyone that has hired me to work as an actress. I go in, I do my job. I prepare with the character. I do everything to the best of my ability. But on the flip side of that, I've worked with people that are like-minded, and that's fun. In fact, I just did a slasher comedy, and I did all my own stunts. It's hilarious. We're still finishing the film, but that said, everyone is like-minded. They know that I carry, and I never carry on set if I'm leaving my bag, but they know that I am an advocate for our Second Amendment, and they're right on board. But it comes out, I don't know, when you're on the same page with people, it comes up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But if you're not, it doesn't. So far for me. Yeah. So, or maybe that's why I don't have an agent.
I mean, agents can be, overbearing sometimes, I'm sure.
Died, sadly. Dave went to bat for me. I loved him. Cowboy Dave. He was all about our Second Amendment. He was a real cowboy. He actually went on tour with Chris Ledoux, is a famous, awesome, real cowboy country singer. And he was friends with him. And
oh, wow.
And so he was a great agent. He got me work left and right. And then my friend Jane Crash, and I don't know that she was so much a Second Amendment gal, but she got me a lot of work. And sadly, she passed away. And that's the...
Do you feel that being an avid Second Amendment or pro Second Amendment, pro gun, do you think that would change people's perception of you in Hollywood?
Maybe it already has, who knows? Once someone posts, maybe it has. I don't know. I have no idea. I really don't. I know that that wouldn't make sense because so many of your films, I love, oh gosh, I can't even think of his name right now, that does all of those movies, and he's very proficient with his firearms. Keanu Reeves. And most of these actors, and if you're not, how sad they're, I won't even bring it up. I won't even bring it. But anyway, sad things happen when people are not only don't respect a firearm, but don't even use, because it is scary, but yet they'll pick up a gun, and even though there's blanks and everything, you still have to go about that the right way. But anyway.
Do you think that I guess let's phrase it this way. Do you feel that there are actors who do that and say one thing in the public, and then it's basically hypocritical because they're handling firearms in movies?
100%. I mean, 100%. Yeah. That's, yeah. They're making, some of these actors are making multi-millions, and they're murdering people with a firearm in the film. So, like murder. So, yeah, it's very hypocritical. It's like, if you are so against that, don't take the paycheck or the job, if that's really something you stand for. So at the end of the day, I think, yeah, that's an interesting dichotomy in Hollywood that I don't think is discussed very much, where a lot of these actors, yeah, they're very outspoken and want gun control, or want our guns removed, and want socialism. They're characters that appreciate.
There's plenty of other countries to move to if you want that.
Yeah.
So kind of getting into the hunting side of things, I've seen posts of you and Chris out hunting. What has been your most memorable hunting experience?
Gosh, that is such a good one. This is the first time anyone.
And you know what?
Anything like this.
I'm so glad that the questions that I've come up with have been set aside from any other of the podcasts or interviews that you've done.
Oh yeah. No one has asked me this, and I don't think I've ever even shared it. But favorite hunt. Okay. So you have to understand, I never grew up hunting. Until I married Chris, and he was a hunter, but he really appreciates, they have the whitetail, which is smaller deer, and we have our beautiful big deer here. So, but I drew an elk tag. Oh gosh, it's been years ago, but it's my favorite hunt. And it was cow elk, and I love elk. So for me, as a hunter, and learning about hunting and going to the hunter safety course, which I recommend for anyone to do, because it's actually some of your greatest conservationists are hunters. And I, learned a lot and loved it. And so my elk hunt, we were, you go and you look, and we don't have a guide. We just go, I forget what area it is in Nevada. It was in the middle of nowhere, beautiful. And,
was this up north?
Yeah. No, not northern Nevada. Closer to Ely, outside of Nevada. But anyway, we were just driving on all these roads and looking, we'd get out and walk, and we had even run into a few old timers that had been hunting in that area their whole lives, and they hadn't seen anything, and nobody had seen anything. And so one morning I saw a herd at the bottom of this, it was a mountain, and there were these fingers coming down where they came down and were eating in this meadow. And this is thought I was going to get it then. I thought, my husband said, no, they'll come back this evening. What we'll do is we're going to get you set up. And, I want you to do this all on your own. And I'm going to set you up. They're going to come back to those same fingers. And, so anyway, he gets me set up probably about 2:00 in the afternoon. They were all gone. They eat in the morning and usually leave, but they usually come back to the same spot. But animals are so unpredictable. So he sets me up, and it's like a makeshift, I called it a makeshift deer blind, but we're looking for elk. I had my range finders, and I practice. It's like how I train with my concealed carry. I, train. You want to be ready. And I'm by myself. I'm like, this is my first hunt all by myself. So I have my range finder, and it's freezing. I think it was like 5 below a few nights. It was insanely cold. But the day, it's not too bad. But I have my full snow camouflage gear with my face covered, everything. And I have my rangefinder, and I'm sitting in, and my husband and my daughter left, and he gave me a radio. And he said that, this evening, go ahead and radio me. I sat there, and I would practice with my rifle, range find, and there were these wild horses. And I would range find the wild horses and get them in my scope and just steady myself. I'm doing different prone. I'm doing, if I have to do this, if I have to do that, I'm just by myself, just having a ball, right? Cutting this out. I'm like, this is an 900,000 pound animal I'm going to be taking down. I don't want to mess up.
Right.
Range finding. Okay. Oh gosh. Okay. I know how far when I see this, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, finally, it's, dusk. It's starting to get dark anyway. It's not, the sun, is getting ready to set. And I'm like, oh, they're not going to come back out. And then the horses that I kept looking with my binoculars, the horses looked over really fast. And I was like, the elk just came in. They just came in. They didn't come in the same fingers. They didn't come in front of me where I was going to watch them. They came in behind me. I'm like, oh, shoot. Oh, my gosh. Oh, shit. There, and I need to get over there. Well, it's snow. There's snow. Probably about 4 feet of snow. And so I go down through the trees, and I look where the horses looked. It is fun in nature how the birds will tell you. That you start to learn the animals tell you things. Well, the horses told me. And I was like, oh, geez. And they're looking over at these elk, and I knew it. So I go to the other side, and they came through these other fingers that were on the other side of this hill that Chris had put me on. And they were far, and it was a whole herd. And I'm like, oh my gosh. There was probably, I would say there was about 13 of them. And I was like, oh, okay, I got to get to them. But I don't want them to see me. But they noticed the horses. Those elk saw the horses, but they're cool with each other. They're like, we hang out all the time. But I'm low crawling in the snow. I start sweating, and I'm like, so I'm pulling off everything. I pull everything off. And then I'm like, I got to leave everything here. I can't bring my binoculars. I can't bring everything. All I need is my rifle. Because then I'm like out of breath. You get the buck fever. It's a real, and I'm like, oh my gosh. Okay, I've got to use brass, breathe, relax, aim, sight, squeeze, right? I'm like, I've got to go through brass because you've got to calm down. So I get close enough. I think I'm 250 yards away, but I would lift myself up and I could see them. But when I went down, they were out. They couldn't see me. I couldn't see them. Mm-hmm. I knew they didn't hear me. I'd low crawl, look, low crawl, low crawl, look, and then I'm thinking, oh my God, my friends would die. Like all of my friends that know me from high school would never see me low crawling in the snow to go. So I get close enough, and I had to use my bipod, and I knew the only way I was going to be comfortable, because I'm like, I can't, because I can crouch, but I'm like, I don't want to do anything where I'm at all moving. I've got to use my bipod. And that thing is kind of loud, the one I had at the time. So there's a lead out, elk, there's a lead elk, and she made this bleeding noise to alert the other elk. I'm like, you bitch. So then I do the other, but I let the other one down. I'm like, oh God, it's like now or never. And it's her. I knew it was her, the lead elk, because she's the one that went sideways and gave me a shot. And the sun at this point, I could only kind of see really good through my scope. I could, like with my naked eye, I could see, but the sun, it's almost time you can't take your last shot, So I'm looking through the scope. I'm like, okay. And I always pray. I'm like, Heavenly Father, I just pray that I pray that it's one shot, she'll just drop. I always pray that. Just let him drop, because I don't want anything to suffer. I'm not going to track this thing in the dark. Anyway, I took the shot and, wrapped the round and like in case, and she walked in a circle and laid down. Well, then I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, I'm not going to approach her because it's very dangerous. She could jump up if I did, and you're never 100% sure. I've learned this with hunting. Like, I don't care. You might think that thing dropped and their will to survive is insane, but it's harvesting the animal. And for me, I was like, it's delicious meat. I know I'm going to enjoy it, and they don't suffer. And I always pray that they don't, that I just, that good shot right behind the shoulder for me is, and I did. I perfectly lung and heart.
Nice.
And she, she walks, all of the other elk scattered, and she walked in a circle and laid down. That said, my husband had me radio him. Well, I was so excited, but it's emotional for me. It's very emotional. And I'm like, thank you, God. Thank you. Thank you so much. And then I'm like, oh gosh, I'm on the wrong channel. I get like, Chris. And now the sun is down. The sun is down. So I had to explain to him over the radio. I said, I'm not where I was. I left all of my stuff on that hill. I left my rangefinder, and then like disrobed as my, like, I've got to get there, and I was sweating and I wanted to be able to see really well. All of the things that you don't expect, but it made it fun. It's fun. These are memories that are so incredible. My daughter was so cute. They were somewhere they were making a grilled cheese sandwich, and my daughter started getting nervous. She was probably, I think she was 9 or 10 at the time. And she said, Dad, we got to go get Mo. Gotta go. He said, no, she'll radio us. And I did. I'm so proud of that hunt, because it was all on my own, and knowing that was my elk. And then, I had to tell him, pass the little hill you put me on and be on that road. And then it even gets worse, because it's so freezing cold, and your eye line changes. The whole terrain changes. All the trees, everything looks different when the sun is down. And I didn't want to move. I fixed my eyes where she was, and I didn't want to move. And so he drives up, and of course, if you know my husband, so he's just, there's no one like him. But he's like, okay, where is she? And I said, okay, well, I'm going to walk forward where I know she laid down. It was 175. I know it was 175. That's about exactly what it was. And so he's like looking, and we couldn't find her. And he goes, well, where is she? So now at this point, I'm crying. It's like, I know. And he's like, stop crying. Crying, calm down. Are you sure you hit her? Then I'm mad. I'm like, I know I did. We finally find her. And this is where it gets really funny. So he's so fast at cleaning an animal, and I let him do it. I could do it. He's taught me. I could do it. Just don't do it fast enough, right? And I wanted this. I was like, I wanted to do it because I wanted to do everything with this hunt. I said, this will be the first time I clean it. I wanted to do all of it. I'm going too slow. So he's like, of course it's freezing, and my daughter's in the truck and the heater, and he's so fast with everything. And then we have our water, we spray it. It turns into meat, beautiful meat immediately. sectioning her out and getting that beautiful backstrap, all of it. We put all this meat in the cooler, and we just didn't think because it was so cold, and I couldn't lift that thing. It was so much meat. Are you insane? And he goes, just come on, pick it. So we had to take the meat out. We always lay out a thing so it's not on the ground or anything.
Yeah.
But we're taking the meat out one big chunk at a time, and then had to put the cooler in the now we'll never do that again with the big elk. But I'm not strong enough. But anyway.
So how do you feel that has shaped your view on nature and wildlife, having such a tremendous hunt like that?
I respect what God gives us more. And it's fun to harvest. I don't ever call it killing. It's harvesting the animal, immediately. Like I said, it turns right into this beautiful meat. And it's so good and so good for you. It helps for me to appreciate again what God gives us and how nature works, and even those wild horses, how they gave away those elk, and there's different things that you learn, and once you see things, once you're glassing, when you go out and you glass, it's one of my favorite things to do. Your eye picks up on things it never would. And you don't realize how much wildlife is out there. So many people just drive by and they have no idea.
Exactly.
How much wildlife is out there.
Yeah.
That's fun. And it's just, it gives you a real appreciation. And I love being alone out there. I never realized. That's what I love about a hunt, if you're by yourself. I love the solitude with nature.
And see, for me, like that's what hiking is. Like hiking and just being one with nature. Like there's nothing better than hiking up to a mountaintop, looking at the view and just saying, wow, this is, what God gave us. This is, an amazing view. And sometimes, you have a beer or tequila, whatever your fancy is at the top, and then you head back down. But, it's just those things that make you appreciate life even more is, experiencing nature in itself.
Oh, yeah. 100%. Yeah.
So kind of getting back into firearms in your personal collection, is there a particular firearm that you're most attached to, and what makes it special?
Gosh, that's a good one. It's so funny because I even made my little list here because, well, gosh, there's so many different kinds, as you know. One thing that I'd like to get more into that I'm not well versed in, unless it's hunting, because I love to bird hunt. That's another thing I love to do, dove, and but I don't have an over-under for that, but I'd like to get more into the over-unders. When it comes to shotguns,
okay.
My EDC, I have the SIG 365, and I have my 12 and 15 round, magazine that I carry. That's my everyday. And I love it, and I love the color. I got the, oh gosh, what is it? It's the flat, dark earth color. It's a beautiful color. So I love it. I know it's funny. It's an easy, small, compact, but yet, we like to keep our rounds. My husband and I like to keep our rounds with our guns very uniform. So 9mm is what most of our guns are.
Okay.
I love revolvers way more than he does. Like I love a 357 that you can also shoot a 38 through, and it feels like a BB gun. I love, and I love Western revolvers. That's like my dream is I want to make a Western, but yeah, you do too. You like revolvers?
I feel like you're the female version of Dirty Harry.
That's funny.
Love me the revolvers.
I love those big, obnoxious revolvers. I just do. But, one of my favorite guns that my husband, he should have never let me shoot this gun because it's the CZ Tactical Sport that there's a Kimber that I love. I love so many different firearms. And, like with my elk, I got that's obviously a rifle, but, that was a youth model and I had it, modified. There's things that I like to do there. So you're not getting the,
Yeah.
anyway.
Understandable. So in staying with firearms, what's your opinion on the current conversation around firearms safety, especially when it comes to women, gun ownership?
One of the things I think that with gun ownership, one of the things it's the most important thing is gun safety. So, I always tell women, just know the full functionality of your firearm, know where, what's your safety and all of those things. Red is dead, when it comes to certain firearms, red is dead. Just always remember red is dead. And, if you're going to keep it on safety, and it's difficult. There's so many different conversations here and a lot to unpack because, a lot of women that have children, you want to be very safe around young children that really don't have a comprehension of what a firearm is. Like I said, my dad taught me when I was very young and I understood immediately, wow, this is deadly. It computed for me. But when you have little children, 3 years old, that you don't even, they can't comprehend any of that. Safety is very important. So if you have your everyday carry, it's a tough one. You've got to be a very stern parent. That's where discipline comes involved, and people don't talk about that anymore. But when it comes to children, you've got to have your kids respect you. You don't go through mom's purse. But that's also something that, if you have little ones that could or would, you've got to take those precautions and maybe it's in the glove box locked up and you have a tactical, awareness and training where you're like, okay, if anything goes down, I got to get it out of the glove box, blah, blah, blah. You have to think through those things if you have kids. If you don't, and there's not that danger, like even when I go to my brother's house and I know there's kids, I always stick my firearm up on the top of this refrigerator. I'm very thoughtful of those things. It's all gun safety. And I know that most of those men carry, I'm not going to worry about it. But when I'm by myself, I'm just very aware. I'm very aware. It's always muzzle awareness, obviously, and it's always like, just understanding what situation you're in. For a woman that might want to carry, women are more vulnerable. A lot of people don't want to believe that men and women are different. Women are very different and very, very vulnerable, and we are weaker. And you want to, I always think out scenarios, and my husband always makes me whatever purses. I carry different purses all the time. I want to know how I'm going to pull it out, how fast I am, how the distance of if there is a threat, all of those things, you go through it. It's training. And if you're not training, you shouldn't be out there. You're a danger. If you're going to carry and you're not proficient and you're not aware of gun safety, that's, you know what I mean?
I agree. Repetition, is one of the keys. And then, safety is right up there with it.
And always be aware of your surroundings is a huge one. And you're always aware. You always have to be aware. You can never let your guard down. You just can't. Alert is, this looks like it could be shady. This person looks like they could be shady. There's that. Alarm is, you are in my space, and everyone has that inside of them. I tell women, you can look at someone. There's a gut feeling God gives you for a reason, and
Well, and so for me, and with, my background and what I do, like, I'm constantly, my head, my eyes, well, maybe not my head, but my eyes are always on the swivel, always looking at everybody. I'm always looking at hands. I'm looking at what people are doing. I'm, um, for lack of better words, judging people's behaviors. And, you can tell a lot. You sitting somewhere downtown Las Vegas, you sit at an outdoor patio somewhere and you just people watch. You can learn so much about people's psychology, not only while they're intoxicated, but, even sober, but just sitting there people watching. One, it's great entertainment, but two, like, you just learn people's ticks. You learn everything about people, even just in the brief few minutes that you see them passing by.
And most people don't have that. They don't understand that, exactly. Yeah. And there's always someone that you can see in a room too. Yes.
Mhm.
And follow their behaviors or their patterns. It's interesting. As an actress, that's what I do. I observe people, and that's one of the greatest tools an actor has. So it's interesting. That's kind of a neat correlation, because shame on me, Matt, but what is your background? I don't even know. I know that were you special forces? Were you?
So I did executive protection for most of my military career. I worked for the Secretary of Defense, Deputy Secretary of Defense, the U.S. Mil Rep to NATO in Brussels, doing protection for them. And then, I've just been doing protection for high net worth individuals and anyone who requires security that comes to Vegas.
Okay. Well, that's awesome. Yeah. Yeah. And you have to be aware of all of those things. And there's odd threats. Yeah. It's sad that we live in a time, I'm addicted to the ID channel, and my brother was a homicide detective here. So, he also has drilled me. So I think everyone's a murderer. It's horrible. I'm always ready. It's horrible to be hyper vigilant, but sadly, we're living in a society now where you have to be. And why be one of those people that just believes everybody's good? They're not. People have bad intentions, sadly.
They do, for sure. So going back into tequila, it often brings people together. Do you have any fun or memorable, even the worst, the worst experience that you've had, either with friends, family, or alone?
One, because I will tell you, and I didn't even think of this one, because it's funny. You kind of showed me what we might be, anyway. And one of the things I didn't even think about, but it's so sad, and we love each other dearly, so we're fine now. But we went to Tijuana. My Drew and I made a movie together, Picture in the Pinup. He works for Paramount. He's still one of my very best friends. It was him, his sister Mary, my friend John Barrier, and myself. I think it was just us four. And we went to Tijuana, and they were called siren shots. And they pour the tequila and the orange juice upside down in your mouth. They have holsters. And so I couldn't believe I even did this. So I'm like, drinking this tequila, and it was probably crappy tequila. Oh my gosh, it made me mean. Tequila, it must be bad tequila. Made me, but I'm never a mean. Never. Like, I'm not a mean person. So my friend Drew, because we're still friends to this day, and I'm still friends with his sister, thank God, because I love her. I was calling her names. I was so drunk on tequila that she wanted to go. She goes, "We have to go." And I was like, "You're so dumb. Why do we have to leave?" I was so mean. And Drew and my friend John were even like, "Oh my gosh, what is wrong with you?" So that was a crazy, and I don't even remember how we even left Tijuana. It's a miracle we lived. But that was one of the bad times. Good times with tequila is more recently. I told you I found myself at the table at Jasmine with Gavin Malouf and a few other interesting human beings, and watched him as he made a huge deal for the East Coast for his new tequila. That was a good tequila moment, and sipping that was delicious. And then my husband, always when we're out and about, we love stomping around in our side-by-side and out in nature. And I always, my go-to, he'll get me a bottle of Patron, but you're going to have to educate us on good tequila.
I will definitely send you a list of good tequilas. And then on top of that, we will get you guys out to some club events so you can experience it yourself.
Yes, because the last time I think we went to some piano bar. It was for Michelle's birthday, our mutual friend that's one of your best friend's sister, and who I go to church with, of all things. And that was one night we had so much fun. I remember singing, and we were pub crawling, and then we did skeet golf.
Yes.
So fun.
Yes, that, and believe it or not, that was quite a few years ago.
Yeah. Like, I know.
How time flies.
It's crazy. I know.
I think at her last birthday crawl, I don't think you guys were able to come.
I know. Yeah.
So, how do you find balance between your career in entertainment and your hobbies? Is there harmony between them, or, do you keep them separate?
In a way, they're one and the same because, I love it so much. You could consider it a beautiful hobby. I love storytelling. I love writing. I love collaborating with other artists, creatives. So I've played a few roles where I've understood certain things with a firearm that's been interesting and fun. You know what I mean? Like, because that's something that I enjoy, that I've been able to kind of mesh. Right? I mean, I'm pretty balanced when it comes to all of that, I enjoy life. I enjoy the people that I love. I enjoy, I'll enjoy doing an acrylic pour and art, singing. I was in a cover band, and I'm very adventurous, which to my husband's probably dismay because he's more even where, he's
a very even keel person. So,
and very simple in a good way. He could have things, he could eat the same thing every day, and and not me. Oh, I want to do this. And he always says, did we check that off our bucket list? He'll say that to me. That off our bucket list. I'm like, I'm going to go do it again, but like more,
right.
And he's like, I'm good with that. He's so funny.
That's awesome. So what does the future look like for you in terms of career, your passion? Are there any projects that you're currently working on, ventures, or, goals that you're wanting to pursue?
I am having so much fun playing the mother of the lead character in a YouTube series right now that I hope ends up becoming something more, because it's such a talented group of people. I'm very proud to be a part of it. If people want to look it up, it's on YouTube. It's called A-List Casting. My episode is Maybe Acting. I play May, and I'm having so much fun with her. I love comedy. I have a partner in crime. They used to cast us together all the time. My friend Robert Scott Howard. We have these characters and a project that we want to bring to life that's very Zach Galifianakis, Between Two Ferns.
Oh.
But it's red carpet crashers, and my character is horrible, but it's great.
That would be
William Gertie
funny.
Stone. Oh yeah, no, and I even ride him like a horse. He thinks he identifies as a horse, and I'm his agent in Hollywood, and he thinks the way he's going to make it is I'm his guru. The whole thing is over the top ridiculous. Very Carol Burnett, very Carol Burnett. And actually, Harvey Korman, who worked a lot with Carol Burnett, who was in Blazing Saddles, no longer with us, sadly. His son reached out to me, and I think that we may be collaborating on some things, which is very exciting. And then I have a few feature films that I want to do. I want to direct my first short within the year, and I'm super excited about that. And that's more serious. As much as I love comedy, I love drama. That's my love is telling story. And you know about Chris's brain tumor and all of those things. A lot of those things have affected me. And I think as an artist, I want to bring some of those things to light, and PTSD to light. And so I am working on a short right now. I already know the DP that I want. I've worked with him before. So I want to eventually make it into a feature film, but it touches on a lot of different things, from PTSD to sadly sex addiction and things that are detrimental to people's mental health. And we're living in a time where a lot of things are very accessible. And I think, it might sound hypocritical having posed for an adult magazine, but I think that there are a lot of people that suffer from different addictions that I think should be brought to light, that can help a lot of people. So those are some of my things that I'm being very vague because I can't
completely understandable. Completely understandable. And I'm excited for you for what's to come. That sounds amazing. I think you're going to kill it. So you had mentioned earlier in the podcast that you're a host as well with your friend Echo on the Bunny Chronicles, a podcast that deep dives into the history of Playboy, and focuses, on Hugh Hefner. How did the podcast come about, and what was it like working with Hugh?
Well, every now and again, the girls, because we still have fans, the Playmates still have fans, and it is nice to monetize off of that. Sadly, it's just like people are going to monetize off of it anyway. I don't mind going to sign autographs and making some money. So we were doing an autograph signing here in Las Vegas. It was called Glamour Under the Stars, and I think Tara Reid and a bunch of other actresses and people were there, and then Playboy Playmates. And Echo stayed with me because it was Vegas, and so she stayed with me. And we actually, because I'm more of a bourbon girl, by the way, not much at all, but so we were drinking bourbon by the fire, and I think Chris was out of town at this point. So funny when I'm looking back at this. I think he was on a hunt, and so we had girls' night at my house. So we signed autographs, came and sat and talked, and I was telling her about a documentary that I wanted to do about, it was actually, I thought it would be so neat to go into the mansion now and then go talk to different Playmates, and I had this structure in my head about documentary I wanted to do. So that said, she told me about wanting to start a podcast, and this was back in late 2020, 2021. And it might have been 2021. Anyway, she said, I want to do this podcast called the Bunny Chronicles and just really go do a deep dive and interview all of the people that knew Hef, worked with Hef, and this was before Secrets of Playboy, which is a documentary that came out on A&E, which was basically, I'll be very honest, it's a hit piece and it's lies and a lot
that was with
people telling their side of the story. And I know people personally, and I heard lies. Like one of the ladies said that every Playmate of the Year slept with Hef to get Playmate of the Year. I didn't sleep with Hef. I never touched Hef with a 10-foot pole, and I know many girls that did not. I loved Hef. He was my friend. You know what? The girls that wanted to be in his bed, they wanted to be in his bed. They're the ones that clawed their way into his bed. And he was very strict, very careful. He hated drugs. There's all these things I know about him because in the 70s there was a cocaine scandal. And I mean, all of those things. He was very serious about his brand. So anyway, once she came up with the Bunny Chronicles, I thought, I just don't want to go back to Playboy. I've moved on. It's not part of my life anymore. It's something that I did. I'm a Christian. Not that I'm a legalist, like by any means, that thinks, I don't regret anything. Long story short, it's just something I didn't want to put my foot forward with anymore. But everything she said, I was like, this does sound interesting. And she's like, Corinna, please, I want you to be my co-host. And I just love Echo. The first time I met Echo at the Playboy Mansion at a Playmate of the Year party, and we immediately thought everything was funny. We laugh at everything. I love her dearly. She's a little bit wild, but I love her. She's really, she's like a dude. I always say she's like a dude. She's just, you get what you get with Echo. She'll tell you this. She may be a train wreck, but she's an honest train wreck. So anyway, I ended up doing some episodes and then ended up with breast cancer of all things. So I told her, I'm probably not supposed to do this. Move on. We're back to doing more interviews and episodes, and we're not as consistent as maybe your podcast or other podcasts. We haven't been as consistent, but because of the nature of what it is, and we have so many fans and followers still, we are doing great as far as listeners because it's a niche thing. There's people still want to know about Hugh Hefner and still want to hear the stories. And we had Mickey Gilley on. This is a neat thing. Mickey Gilley is a country singer that I tap into. He's just old school, awesome. And I was shocked. I had no idea Playboy had a record label. There's things I started to learn. He couldn't get signed by anyone, and Hef signed him on the record label where no one would sign him because his cousin was huge. His cousin, Jerry Lee Lewis, I mean, they're famous, freaking out of this world, but they're so different. Their sound was different. No one knew what to do with him, but and then it went to the Billboard charts. I mean, I was just blown away with the respect that people have for this man too. And even though he had a magazine that was very controversial, it was honest, objective journalism, I'm learning. Things that we don't have anymore, where you really get the truth of people and you can form your own opinion. And that was fascinating to me. And then just, even if something's wrong and you don't agree with it, I would rather hear the truth about it than your opinion about it.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And I think as society and as the way America's going, take the last, decade, you have to do your own research on stuff. You have to deep dive and not take things at such face value sometimes that, you can't fall into that trap of, what either the media is portraying things as going on. They could take a snippet of a conversation, and if you go back and you find the full video of the conversation, you're like, wow, that's so way out of context.
100%. But sadly, people are lazy too, and emotions dictate people's, emotions can't think. So you have a lot of emotional people now, and instead they go on, and that gets back to the whole gun thing. When you have emotions that aren't thinking, everybody gets on this bandwagon. And exactly. And then now with AI, there's so many things that can be spun, and it's terrifying.
Yeah.
So you're so cautious and so careful. And firsthand firsthand accounts are important, and we don't get that. So treasure it when you do. I tell everyone that.
Mm-hmm.
Treasure when you really meet someone, and you know if somebody's an honest, objective person who has integrity. You know it. You know it. I sit with my brother. I love my brother. He's a man with integrity. You hear from their mouth, because yes, things will be spun and you're like, wow, and it sounds so convincing, and they have an agenda and an objective, or they're activists, so they're going to spin it to their favor. And it's like, okay, whether you agree with this or not, that's a lie.
It's the narrative.
Enough integrity to know that they're making that up. Like, at least get the truth. Yeah, and it's to get the truth anymore.
Yeah, it definitely has been what fits the narrative.
Yeah.
So where can everyone find you on social media?
Well, let me look, because I was hacked in 2019, and I had a lot of followers organically and was having so much fun and the wind out of me. So Corinna Harney-Jones is one of them, and I guess it would be Corinna Harney. You could look up at Corinna Harney. But I also have the Bunny Chronicles one, the Bunny Chronicles handle. I have Corinna Harney, PMOY, the Bunny Chronicles Podcast. And I'm not on that one so much, but I mean, I don't have big, huge social media. I've been bad at it. I've got to get better. But also why I don't have an agent, because now, it's a big deal. You have to have millions of followers to, even have an agent that's going to look at you. That's another thing. But it can get overnight, like Tactical Tequila. It could get huge overnight.
Look, one day, like, as long as they're legit followers, like, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, right?
I'm okay with it blowing up. Like, that's what I would love to see happen with the podcast. Like, I want to see it take off. And
I think you to have an actual tequila called Tactical Tequila. I really think you need that.
That may be in the works in the future. We'll see. But for now, just gotta wait for everything to transpire. Well, Corinna, thank you for being on the podcast. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Even wearing his camo, I like it.
Yes, his camo and this little navy, because my husband was in the Navy.
Well, thank you again so much. And everyone, thanks for tuning in.
Thank you. So good to see you.
You as well.